Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. This happened a few years ago. My neighbor started parking on the street behind my car, like literally inches, for no apparent reason. My neighbor had a driveway, empty, and also lived 2 houses down the street. I didn't have a driveway, so on-street parking was a must for me. After a few weeks, I asked if it was necessary to park so close when there were literally no cars on the street for over a quarter of a mile. He said, "No, but there's no law against it," with a big crap-eating grin on his face. A few weeks passed by and my car got hit because someone thought there was enough room to clear as his truck blocked the view of my car entirely. I saw this happen, but unfortunately couldn't get a model or license plate number. I found my neighbor's email address, because I really didn't feel like talking to him, and asked him again if he could park further down the road, closer to his house. He replied, "Nope, suck on it." Okay. I had lived here for quite a long time and never had any issues with him or any other neighbor. I keep to myself, never make noise, don't have any noisy pets or parties, etc. His truck had his business name on it. I googled it and found out it was his own business. There were lots of Yelp reviews, a BBB rating, etc. All these links pointed to his website. I went to check his website, but it didn't load up. I headed over to Hui's and saw that the domain wasn't registered. I snagged it. Before I thought of what to do with it, I googled the owner's name and found out he'd been convicted of murdering a child 20-ish years ago. I found a handful of links that detailed his story rather explicitly. I copy-pasted all those links into an email to him, a throwaway account so he couldn't just reply to me as I deleted it afterward. I said something like, "Well, if you want to be a jerk for no reason, I just bought your business domain. Here are all the links I plan on posting on it. I don't have to list your business name because all of your business listings across the internet have this URL pointing to it. Keep parking like a jerk. Yes, it's legal, but you are willfully doing this just to annoy me. I legally bought your domain and can legally link these articles. Park behind me again and I'll launch it." Within an hour, his truck was moved into his driveway. He asked me for the domain and I told him, "When either you move or I move, I'll hand it over. Until then, it'll remain offline." The next one is an entitled people story. Moving into a new home is always an exciting moment, and my wife, young daughter, and I couldn't wait to start our new life in the property we had inherited from my wife's uncle. The house needed some work, but we were eager to make it our own and start creating memories in it. However, our new start was soon marred by a problematic neighbor named Amos. It was only a matter of minutes after we arrived at the property that Amos came out of his house and started to talk about property lines. He seemed to be very interested in the fence that we shared, claiming that it was actually on his property and that he wanted to remove it and plant some trees in its place. I didn't think much of it at first, but I soon realized that Amos was a difficult person to deal with. I tried to reason with Amos, telling him that we could discuss the issue later, but he seemed determined to get his way. A few weeks later, I arrived at the property to find that the fence had been torn down and some trees had been planted on our side of the property line. I was furious, but I decided to hire a surveyor to find out where the property line actually was. The surveyor quickly confirmed that the fence was indeed on our property, and I went to confront Amos with the news. He was dismissive and claimed that he had his own surveyor who disagreed. I knew that he was lying, but I decided to give him the benefit of the doubt and wait for his surveyor's report. Days turned into weeks, and I heard nothing from Amos. I decided to take matters into my own hands and began to rebuild the fence. But just when I thought everything was settled, Amos appeared with his lawyer and claimed that the new fence was encroaching on his property. I was stunned. I had spent a lot of time and money building the fence, and I couldn't believe that Amos was still trying to get his way. But instead of getting angry, I decided to take a different approach. I called a mediator and arranged a meeting between myself, Amos, and a neutral third party. At the meeting, we went over the property line documents and discussed the best way to resolve the issue. After a few hours of discussion, we finally came to an agreement. I would move the fence a few inches back onto my property, and Amos would remove the trees that he had planted on my side of the line. We shook hands and parted on good terms. I thought that the issue was finally over, but a few days later I received a call from my contractor telling me that Amos had cut down the trees in the middle of the night. I was furious, but I didn't want to start another fight. Instead, I called the police and reported the incident. The police came out and investigated, but they couldn't find any evidence that Amos had been responsible. I knew that he was behind it, but I couldn't prove it. I decided to take matters into my own hands and set up a surveillance camera in my backyard. It wasn't long before Amos struck again. I received an alert on my phone that there was movement in my backyard, and when I checked the camera feed, I saw Amos cutting down my new fence with a chainsaw. I couldn't believe it. I was angry, but I knew that I couldn't do anything to stop him. I decided to take a different approach. I contacted a local news station and told them my story. They were interested and agreed to do a story on Amos's behavior and the ongoing dispute between us. The story aired on the local news, and the response from the community was overwhelming. People from all over the city called in to voice their outrage at Amos's actions and to show their support for me and my family. The publicity put a lot of pressure on Amos, and he realized that he couldn't continue his behavior without facing consequences. He finally reached out to me and offered to pay for the damages he had caused. I was hesitant at first, but I eventually agreed to meet with him. At our meeting, Amos apologized for his behavior and admitted that he had been wrong. He said that he was willing to do whatever it took to make things right, and he even offered to plant new trees on my property as a peace offering. I was skeptical, but I decided to give him the benefit of the doubt. I accepted his apology and allowed him to plant the new trees. In the months that followed, Amos and I started to build a better relationship, and we even began to work together on some neighborhood projects. It wasn't a perfect relationship, but it was a lot better than it had been before. I learned that sometimes it's better to try to work things out with your neighbors rather than to fight them. And while I still regret the damage that was done to my property, I'm grateful that we were able to find a way to move forward and build a better community together. Update. Since my dispute with Amos, I've become much more involved in my community. I've joined the local homeowners association and have been working to improve our neighborhood. I've also started a community garden, which has brought together neighbors from all walks of life. Amos and I are still on good terms, and we often work together on community projects. We've even become friends, and I'm grateful for the lessons that our dispute taught me about the importance of building relationships with your neighbors. Looking back on the whole experience, I realized that it was a difficult but valuable lesson. I learned that it's important to stand up for your rights, but also that it's important to try to find common ground with your neighbors. By working together, we can build stronger, more vibrant communities that benefit everyone. The next one is a petty revenge story. Here's my story. I'm a 53-year-old disabled veteran who uses various mobility aids to get around. I also receive almost all of my healthcare and medication from the local VA hospital. Last Monday, I realized that I had run out of some medication and hadn't received the refills yet. So I rushed to the VA hospital pharmacy to get enough to last me until the refill arrived. Since my local VA hospital is huge, I always use my mobility scooter because there's no way I can physically navigate the parking lot and the labyrinth inside. After I completed my transactions and checked in with a couple of my healthcare providers, I scooted myself out the doors with the intention of loading up my scooter in my vehicle and leaving. However, as it was a Monday, everyone and their dog was trying to find parking to get into the building, and cars were driving around looking for available spots. As I was heading past vehicles, one car pulled slightly in front of me to block my ability to move forward, and the woman in the car rolled down her window and yelled at me for trying to cut in line. She claimed that she was there first. Yada yada. The guy in the car next to me just stared at her with an absolute what the duck expression, about to get out of his vehicle to help me confront the woman. I shook my head and backed up my scooter to go a different way to get to my vehicle. She passed me as I reached my truck and realized that I was loading up the scooter so I could leave. Well, she decided she was going to take my spot. Not today, Karen. I nodded at the guy who wanted to help me, hopped in my truck, and backed out of the parking space in a way that blocked Karen and gave easy access to the other guy. I made sure to use all 5 fingers when I smiled and waved at her as I drove away. The next one is an entitled people story. This happened some years ago. I'm in my 30s now, but back then I was 22. My sister was 18 and was my mom's golden child. My dad thankfully had a good head on his shoulders and always called my sister out on her behavior. But my mom's interference always meant my sister got off easy anyway. This is what happened back then. My parents decided to take a vacation to ski in Aspen and let my sister watch the house for them. They told her no parties, but that was a rule she straight up ignored. A day after our parents left, my sister started sending out invites to a party, and she was promising free alcohol. I didn't see that post just yet, but my sister called me and asked me to go get alcohol for her party because I was over 21 and could legally buy it. She also wanted me to pay for it and said she'd invite me to the party and introduce me to an easy girl to pay me back. I told her that I wasn't going to break the law to make her happy. She should never have told people her party would have alcohol. She screamed at me over the phone that I was ruining her life and that she couldn't take back the invites now that they were all over her Facebook. I looked at her post and face-palmed. I told her that what she did was really stupid, and she and her friends were all underage, so it's illegal. She tried to say it'd only be illegal if I ratted on them. I said I wouldn't rat, but I wasn't going to buy her booze either. She screamed at me some more, so I hung up the phone. Well, that night my sister had the party, and someone called the police for underage drinking. After being arrested and confronted by police later on, my sister threw me under the bus and said that I'd supplied the alcohol she was using. Turns out she actually broke into Dad's liquor cabinet and thought it'd be better to frame me for her crime. Police came and arrested me at my apartment the day after the party. They seemed already convinced I was guilty and didn't really listen to me when I said I was never there. But I willingly cooperated with them. At the station, I told them the whole story and got them to look at my sister's Facebook post. Thankfully, there were a few people there who listened to me. But I still had to spend the night in a cell while my parents were called. My mom and dad flew back home overnight and bailed out both my sister and me. But my mom tried to make my dad leave me in jail because my sister had told them her lies as well. But my dad took the time to talk to me and look at my sister's Facebook. So he believed me. This caused a fight between him and my mom. When they got home, my dad discovered my sister had broken into his liquor cabinet and spoke to police on my behalf. My mom, however, still wanted the blame to fall on me because, as she put it, the charges were ruining her baby's future. But my innocence was further proven by the fact that my car and I were seen on CCTV when I left work and when I arrived home soon after, as the apartment I was living in then had CCTV cameras to watch the parking lot. My car did not move from there for the rest of the day and night. In my sister's story to police, I had driven out and gotten the alcohol for her, but I wasn't seen on CCTV in any liquor store in the county, and my bank account showed no transactions buying alcohol. My parents' house also had a camera at the front door, and my car was never seen in the driveway that day. After being confronted with those facts, my sister's story changed to saying I already had the alcohol and gave it to her at my apartment. But my sister's car had never showed up at my apartment either, and there were only 3 cheap beers in my apartment fridge and no hard alcohol. My sister finally had to give up on her lies, and my parents were severely disappointed in her. But my mom still tried to convince me to take the fall for my sister. She came to my apartment and actually demanded that I tell the police that it was all my fault. I said I wasn't going to ruin my future for my sister. She refused to leave and went from demanding to begging. She even got on her knees and tried to convince me that she and my dad would make everything okay in the long run if I just took the blame now. I said I'd rather live my life poor than have that felony on my record. She threw a huge fit and started throwing things because I refused to do as she wanted. I threatened to call the police, and she left my apartment cussing me out like a mad woman. I've never heard so many F-bombs out of her before or since, but she kept them up all the way to her car and followed it up with saying she should have aborted me before driving off. I called my dad right away and told him everything that happened. He was insanely pissed and got in a huge fight with my mom as soon as she got home. She didn't even deny anything she said or did because she deemed it would have been for the greater good of their daughter. But my dad told her that she couldn't destroy me to save my sister. Then he threatened to divorce her if she didn't try to make things right. She ended up sobbing and then saying she'd do whatever he wanted. My dad said that it was couples and family counseling or it was divorce. My mom signed a prenup before she married him and really had no choice. In the family counseling, I called her out on how she always believed my sister's lies. My sister tried to say they were not lies, but each one I pointed out from over the years said otherwise. I'd taken the time to write a list of all the ones I could remember from the past decade that had all been proven she lied. And my mom and sister were forced to stay silent as I read them all. They tried to interject repeatedly, but my dad and the counselor silenced them. My sister, now proven beyond a doubt to be a liar and a manipulator, just shut down and refused to say anything more to the counselor. And my mom finally apologized to me, but it was obviously a forced apology because she looked so uncomfortable doing it. I told her that her apology was very fake, and after so many years of favoritism, the damage was already done. My relationship with her never really recovered because she was convinced I was guilty no matter what was said until my sister admitted the truth, and then wanted me to pretend to be the guilty one anyway to protect her favorite child. But nothing went her way, so she just went back to crying about it. When my sister went to court, my mom pleaded with the judge to go easy on my sister for the charges of underage drinking and giving other underage people alcohol, as well as attempting to frame me for her crime. She also resisted arrest when the police came and shut down the party. She was very drunk when it happened. They kept her in a cell overnight to sober up, and then she told police I'd been the one to provide the alcohol. My mom's begging, along with the relentless lawyer my parents hired, got the judge to cut a deal, provided my sister pleaded guilty, which she did not want to do. But her lawyer highly recommended she take the deal to avoid jail time because there was no other way of keeping her from getting a felony on her record. My sister's lawyer used the fact that the alcohol had not been bought that day, but rather had already been in the house long before the party happened to help lessen the charges. My sister's FB had also been completely deleted by her as soon as she was able to in order to hide the post. The judge just wanted the case over with, so my sister got off with a huge fine that our mom paid most of out of her own pocket, and a couple of years probation. She was also made to get therapy too by our dad. She's never really shown actual remorse for what she did though, and only had animosity for me no matter how in the wrong she was. She was eventually diagnosed as a narcissist after Dad made her go see a doctor. After her probation and 4 years of college were over, she decided she was going to leave home for California and never come back once she landed a good job. She currently works in an office in LA and we've not spoken in years. Dad got her that job and she's not shown any real appreciation for it. Even my mom has given up on her ever coming home for the holidays and us being a family again. It tore her up inside for a few years. But now she's just bitter. She doesn't really blame me anymore, but we only seem to show indifference to each other. Just because my sister cut her off wouldn't make me the new de facto favorite. It just means my mom lost her baby and isn't getting her back. She can't leave my dad because she's too reliant on him, despite having her own career. She'd never want to be on her own again, so she's just become a shell of her former self. Things between me and my dad are still great. He's pretty much disowned my sister for what she's done and has stopped caring if she'll ever talk to him again. He and my mom don't even sleep in the same bedroom anymore. She moved into the guest room some 5 years ago and has stayed there. Their marriage is really only one on paper these days. The next one is an entitled parents story. So, I was standing in line at the checkout of my local supermarket. I had about 10 items, including some frozen goods, drinks, and snacks. I usually tend to take out one of the buds of my phone, so in case someone addresses me, I would hear it. At this time, the woman at the cash register was taking care of the payment of one client, and there was one person in front of me. And then suddenly, she appeared. The EM in this story. Honestly, she didn't look it. She didn't even give off a mean vibe or anything. Even the way she started talking to me was overall nice and polite. At first. "Excuse me, do you mind if I skip ahead? I'm in a hurry," she said. Now, in general, if somebody politely asks me this and I don't have any urgent business of my own, I usually don't mind. This time, however, I didn't have that many groceries, so her delay would be at most a few minutes while she was pushing a fully loaded shopping cart in front of her. So if I would have let her skip, I'd probably still be in the store for another 10, 20 minutes. So I politely declined and told her I would hurry as much as I can. Of course, this was a great offense. I had not given this woman her entitlement. She blew up instantly, yelling and screaming at me that she was in a hurry and, not kidding here, had to be home in time for her shows. Now, at this time, I would like to point out that during this rant, she only said she had to be home in time for shows, and that they were very important to her. There was nothing else making this urgent for her. This is important a bit later. While this woman was going off, the person at the cash register went into ignore mode and just started scanning my groceries, which I loaded into a bag while the EM was going on about how I was garbage and they should ban me from the store. Now this should have been the end of it. Just turn around and go home and forget this happened. But then she said something that one. made me almost want to kill her, and 2, made this a postable story. While I was walking away, just about to put the earbud back in, she yells, "If you pass by my car, tell my son he's the reason he has to wait another half an hour for me." Now, I'm not an extremely smart person, but in this moment my brain made some connections quickly. What I realized was this. 1. Again, it was very hot outside. 2. This woman had been in the store for a while, judging by the amount of groceries. 3. The entire parking lot of this store had almost no shade. 4. It was about 2 p.m., so the sun was just over its peak. I rush outside and start running past cars, scanning them for kids inside. Thankfully, one of the first cars I pass has a small child lying in the back seat. This kid is as pale as a ghost, sweating like crazy, and it looked like he was only half conscious. I run back inside, and to my utter astonishment, this woman is having a conversation with the cashier while she's checking out her groceries. I grab her by the shoulders, spin her around, and yell almost straight to her face that her kid is literally dying in your car. And if you don't do something right now, I'm smashing in your windows and calling the cops. At first, she looked at me in complete confusion. Probably never been spoken to like that before in her life. Then the realization of what I told her sunk in, and she rushed outside. While she went outside, a man tapped me on the shoulder and asked what had happened. I explained the situation, actually leaving out the bit at the cash register, just saying I saw the kid in the car and knew that this woman was probably the owner. He went outside, and when I came outside, the EM suddenly rushed me and got in my face, saying I was the reason she was in the store for so long and her son's current condition was my fault. Before I could even respond, the man that approached me earlier speaks up. Turns out this man was an off-duty cop and had been in the store for a while and as such knew that the actual delay caused by me could not have caused this. He also said he had already called an ambulance for the kid and the cops for her. I don't know what happened to the EM, but she completely crashed. She just sat down on the pavement and started shaking her head, not saying much except the occasional sob or, "not my fault." As for the ending, everything turned out okay for most parties. I stayed a while to give a statement to the cops and my contact info in case it went to court. The kid was okay afterwards, and since his mom got arrested, they called his dad or another male family member, I didn't ask, to accompany him to the hospital. As for the EM, I'm assuming she is going to have to stand trial for child endangerment. I'm not sure if she'll just get a fine or jail time. Update. I was contacted by the police a few days ago, last Friday. I went to the station where they went over my statement, asked if I wanted to add or amend anything I said. I didn't. They couldn't really tell me directly what was going to happen with the mother or the family in general, but said that the standard punishment when the child is not seriously hurt or dead is usually a gas fine. GAS stands for Gemeentelijke Administrative Sanctie in Dutch and Municipal Administrative Sanction in English. I think it's kind of sad something bad has to happen before serious punishment is handed out. I do not know what the amount of the fine will be, but as for me, it couldn't be high enough. I have not seen any of those people in the store or in the area in general, but I also don't know if they live near here or were just passing by the store by coincidence. Or maybe they are just avoiding the store. That's also possible. That will probably be the end of this tale. I know many of you hoped for something worse for the mother, but sadly, life is not fair. But at least the child lived, and let's hope the mother learned a lesson. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already.